Welcome to Denteamology Live, where we're talking teams. It's optimization through great leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Becky Chen, and this is episode number 7. Now, in this episode today, I have the grand honor of interviewing Dr. Geoffrey Hall. We're going to be covering the topics related to leading your team in orthodontics, and there's no better person to discuss this topic with other than the one and only. So apart from being a very genuine and generous mentor to myself, Geoff is highly accomplished. Having graduated from his postgraduate orthodontics training as Dux at Penn in the USA, Geoff went on to be the first person who brought Invisalign into Australia, among many of his other accomplishments. And now he's set up OrthoED, which is an institution that teaches fellow general dentists how to practice orthodontics and make it work for their business as well. So thank you, Geoff, so much for jumping on today. I know that you are always someone ready to deliver value, and I know that this is going to be a great discussion.
Thanks, Becky. It's a real, to be honest, the honour is all mine to be talking to you. So this is really lovely.
Oh, that's great. Well, do you want to maybe start off with maybe going into, as you know, I started my orthodontic journey with yourself, and what happened was probably quite a few years ago, I was actually coming off maternity leave, and then I saw your Smile Fast course, and that's when I was like, I want to do a little bit of cosmetic work. So then that's what got me into it, and then obviously that's then interested me to keep going with OrthoED and all sorts of other things. If there are any I graduated from Melbourne University, and at that time when I graduated, I felt like with orthodontics, a lot of the things I was very much in the dark, even things like, when to refer a patient and all that sort of stuff. There were times where I really had no clue at all whatsoever, even after having practiced for many years. So if there are any dentists thinking of going into, venturing into some sort of orthodontics, I believe that can be a little bit daunting. How, what do you think how much training, how much investment is involved before someone can actually start taking on cases quite comfortably?
Look, it's really interesting, Becky, because orthodontics has been a closed shop for many, many years in the undergraduate space, and totally for the wrong reasons. It's probably the only field in dentistry that specialists don't teach it. If you look at endodontics, you look at periodontics, they're all there to teach it. They're even there to teach you implants, because knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the better practitioner you're going to be. For some unknown reason, orthodontists have been scared to teach general dentists, and I believe it's because they're going to lose their work, and that's the reason why. Basically, orthodontics is really straightforward. Once you understand the principles, it's the typical Pareto rule, 80% rule. And 80% of orthodontics is easy. The problem is it's the other 20%, and you've got to protect yourself from that. But that's probably no different to any other area in dentistry. The problem is that you haven't been trained how to look at these cases, and probably the most important thing is to assess risks and assess the risk analysis for each patient. So, look, you do need training, obviously, and whether it be in just the diagnosis field, whether it be the fixed appliance field, or now in that really new up-and-coming area of aligners, because even aligner therapy isn't as easy as what the aligner companies want to tell you. And we've all pulled our hair out with cases that don't work properly. So I think you need to do a course, and there are some very good courses around. Obviously, I'm very biased about our course, but I'm sure there are other courses around as well. But the more you learn, the better. And it's not just in orthodontics. I think the orthodontic diagnosis is just one part of treatment planning a patient. Like you said, even learning how to refer. And then I'm going to go one step further, even communicating with the orthodontist that you refer to. Because, it's such a bluff game. Most of the orthodontists out there will tell you what they're going to do. It makes no sense. And you've got to be able to dissect that and know who is good and who's not. Because you would have no problem, and I'm sure everybody in the audience would have no problem in deciding who's a good endodontist to refer to. Because they know endodontics, but they're not sure about orthodontics. I think some training, and I think take it in steps, because like exactly what you did. You started with Smile Fast, and which is just a short-term cosmetic approach, and there's other ones out there as well. And then there was an expression in America which said, "We gave you the fire in your belly," and then you went and you took the next level to learn more, and now you learn all about aligners, you learn all about early treatment, etc., etc. So yeah, I would say to the audience, especially the young ones who are feeling a bit anxious, why don't you just start off with a basic course and just see if you like it? It was actually funny. We had a cousin of a dentist who did our Smile Fast course last year, and she was actually giving up dentistry. And after she did the Smile Fast course, she ended up applying to do a master's in ortho.
Wow.
So she just found something. And to be honest, that's what a good teacher needs to do, is to excite people about it, and that's what we like to do. So I would just recommend, if you are scared, just do a basic course, and start that way, and then there are lots of steps out there from there on to increase your knowledge. But you do need to increase your knowledge without a doubt. But it's not rocket science. It's not a 3-year master's degree. That's for sure.
What would you say, Geoff, would be the fundamentals that a dental practice owner needs to get right to make sure that they are running, if they do go through with, the orthodontic training and everything, what sort of things do they need to run a successful orthodontic department within their general practice?
Well, that's a really hard question. But to be honest, the one great thing about orthodontics compared to every other area of dentistry is that we can delegate 95%. And if you go into aligner therapy, for example, you can delegate 100%. And so your hygienist can be doing everything in aligner therapy except the initial clean check or digital setup. So my feeling about that is, we as orthodontists only make money because we run 4 chairs at one time, and you guys as general dentists don't do that. So how are you going to be profitable? And that means you've got to basically scale your business to ensure that you can get staff members to do a lot of it. And the key here is knowledge, because you should just be an instructor and come in and say, do this and do that. Now, aligners really fit very well into that equation. And but even fixed appliances, you train your hygienist to do most of it, because you probably going to be earning more money by doing your crown and bridge work in your main surgery. But if we could get the hygienist to do orthodontics, for example, let's say, just for argument's sake, it's a $7,000 case, and it takes your hygienist 5-6 hours of work at $50 an hour. Just for, that's $300 or $400. That's $300 or $400 of labour. Now that's an enormous hourly rate for the hygienist. You can have a hygiene room making over $1,000 an hour, which really just changes the whole dynamics of your practice. And if you do it to that level, all I would do is have 4 or 5 hygienists, and you'd be doing pretty well.
Yeah. And
letting the hygienist refer you the crown and bridge work, and you just sit in your surgery and do the really interesting stuff. That's how you make it really profitable.
Yeah. I think you're right with also saying that, when you're running the department, that you're sort of like the brains of that person. So it does take some time to get to that level, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You're not going to get it next year just from,
No. And I think the first part to that is, like everything. When I first came back from practice from the States, I did everything myself for 3 or 4 years, and then I brought in my hygienist, and I delegated a little bit. Now I delegate everything, but you yourself have to learn how to do everything yourself, and then you can teach from there on. So it's really important that you don't delegate too quickly, because you've got to understand the problems, etc. So there's a learning curve, no different to putting in implants. You never make any money for the first couple of years, but you learn, and then you can start to make some money after that. And I'm sure it's the same in clinical dentistry. The first year or two, you were just learning how you do your amalgam and to do a class 1 cavity prep. Now you do that with your eyes shut. Not that I recommend it.
No, I hope not. So in terms of training staff, I know the idea is you need to know, we ourselves need to know what's going on before we can train them. What have you found has really worked for your staff, your team members too? Because I know you train some amazing staff. I've been to your practice. Yeah. I've seen how amazing your team is. And of course, Robin herself is testimonial, because I know she's your treatment coordinator. She's your course coordinator, probably your right arm as well. And and so how do you actually train someone to be at that sort of level, or what do you do? What are some of the tips or things that you've done in the past that's worked really well?
Robin's probably a bit of an exception because she's got a passion herself. But even so, you make sure that you invest in your staff. So we take them onto courses. But I would honestly say what you should be doing is once a month, you should be closing your practice for half a day and just doing staff training. You put a presentation together, you talk to them, and it doesn't have to be clinical. It can also be on the admin side. It could be on communication, and you just make it a half a day a month in improving your staff. And I think because the way I look at staff now is that there has to be more to it than just pay. Everybody talks about whether they pay $25, $26, $30 an hour. At the end of the day, $1 an hour shouldn't make any difference. It's how much they really enjoy being there, and that's how much you really put into the staff. And but the more they can listen to you, or you bring in guest lecturers, whatever it be. I think that's what you've got to invest in. Too many people are worried about, I'm going to lose money. I'm going to lose money for half a day. But at the end of the day, you're going to make a lot more and you're going to have much more enjoyment in your practice as well. Because that's the part I like. I want to go to work and enjoy it, because dentistry is a hard job. Yeah. And especially when you've got staff who start to bitch and carry on. So try and make it that you do enjoy their life. It's a cheap investment.
Yeah. I like that. Half a day a month.
Half a day a month. So that's what we used to do routinely. We used to have half a day a month routinely. It's less now, but we've got staff that are really competent. So we would still do half a day every 2 months in our practice.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I like that. So the question is, if there was this is a big question, if there was a associate who wants to do, so who's already doing orthodontics, and they've asked the owner, okay, I want to do orthodontics, but the owner themselves don't do the procedure, what do you think are some of the things that we need to have in place to make sure that it works fairly for both parties?
I'm sure there's
many ways to skin a cat. Sorry. I was going to say, I'm sure there's many ways to skin a cat. There's probably a few different ways of doing it.
Oh, absolutely. I get this question asked a lot after the event. Okay? And it's like unscrambling the egg. So learning from that, I would be saying to you, the first thing you need to do is you have to have a legal agreement in place that says they are going to stay on and finish all their cases. Because the worst thing that happens is there's nobody in the practice. Okay, there's nobody in the practice to take on the case. Then they go off to the orthodontist. The orthodontist throws everybody under the bus. It becomes a real nightmare, and your practice suffers accordingly. Okay, and who's responsible? Technically speaking, it's probably the owner that's responsible financially. Okay, but the practicing clinician, which is responsible from a moral or ethical situation with APRA. So my advice is to have a really strong legally binding document to say you will continue in the practice and finish off all those cases. Okay, that's part of it. And if you don't, because you've got to have something in that agreement to say, well, if you don't want to go to court over this stuff. You've got to have something in there which says, if you don't, you're going to pay back X amount of dollars per patient. So you just have something very simple, because you don't want to start to figure out how many months left in treatment, etc. You're going to have an argument about it. So I would just have a flat fee and say, okay, if you for every patient that you're not going to finish off, it's going to be $1,500 that you owe me. Okay, and it's legally binding. That's the first thing. The second thing, though, is that's only part of the problem, because even when you finish the case after, say, 2 years, you're actually guaranteeing a retention part as well for another couple of years. So what happens if they get relapse? So in the ideal world, you should also have a 10 or 15% retainer in there and give it to them 2 years after they've left to cover all the retention patients. But I'll be honest, it's very hard to be able to get an associate dentist to sign an agreement like that. It'll be really difficult. But that would be the ideal. I think the first thing you have to say, they have to keep returning until they've finished every patient. I think that's the first part. If you can get the other part to it, then you're going to be also very well protected.
Yeah.
Because who's going to take the patients on afterwards? I mean, there is another option, is that they could take all those patients with them, but then they would have to pay you a higher fee. So if you didn't want to, let's say you didn't like orthodontics in any way whatsoever, and so there were all these patients left over, you could say to Dr. B, hey, we're going to transfer the patient to you now, okay? But it's not the $1,500, because we've lost the goodwill of that patient. You're going to have to pay us the $7,000 because you've now just gained a patient. You're going to lose a patient, but it's probably better than having all the headaches.
Yeah,
you've got to make that decision. But the legal agreement is absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. Yeah, and the same goes with aligner therapy. Yeah, orthodontics is not just braces. You've got to think of aligners as well, because even though you might be doing aligner treatment, you may not like your setup. You may not. It's not tracking properly, so it should still apply with even aligner treatment. Yeah, they've got to take the responsibility. If they want to do it, they've got to take that responsibility.
Yes, and I think in your scenario where,
because otherwise, you as a practice owner are the guinea pigs. Yeah, they're learning on you. And then the next part to it as well is, what percentage are you going to pay them?
Yep.
Because I don't believe you can pay 40% on orthodontics. In fact, I don't believe you pay 40% on anything anyway. Okay, in today's environment. It was interesting. When I graduated, which was a long time ago, back in 1983, we got 40% commission. And the people who employed me, who graduated in 1960, also got 40% commission. So I'm not too sure what the commission rates are now, but our costs have just gone up enormously, as we all know. So I think we've got to be realistic. And then, because then the other question you've got to ask yourself as well, if you're going to do orthodontics in your practice, are those material costs like brackets and wires, is that a lab fee or is that a material cost that you pay for? Because it's not the normal materials that you buy. So this is all part that you've got to factor into it. Aligner therapy is a bit easier because there's a lab fee and there's no argument, okay? But for example, people who do POS and they have a specific bracket system, well, that can't be used for anybody else. So that should really be a lab fee and not a material cost. With the practice should not bear that.
Yeah.
So that's just a bit of food for thought.
Yes, lots of food for thought. Can I add into this mix another part of the equation? What if the associate wants to do orthodontics, but they want to delegate the work to a hygienist and the owner themselves don't do orthodontics?
Yep. Well, then the only way, and to be honest, that's a great way to do it. But now what they're doing, in essence, is taking up 2 chairs, okay, because that hygienist would have been productive for you. Okay, so that would be fair. Okay, so you have to then. So the only way you would do it is you would have to say, okay, this hygienist is actually a laboratory fee. So the first thing, but it's more than a laboratory fee, because that hygienist could have been earning you $200 an hour, $250 an hour. So there's an opportunity cost here. So I reckon you would have to charge them out. Some people charge them out just at the $50 an hour plus on cost, superannuation and all the other stuff. And if you've got a nurse working with a hygienist, well, that would have to all be factored in together as a laboratory fee. But I think what's fair is to say that hygienist could have made me $200 an hour. So we're going to charge that hygienist out at $200 an hour. Now remember, the hygienist is making $800 or $900. This guy's making a lot more money, so it is fair. Once again, when you have a assistant, it's very hard if they've never owned a practice, very hard for them to understand the commercial reality of it. I remember I had an orthodontist working with me who thought she should have been on 50% because that's what she was on in London. Wow. And I'm going, this is ridiculous. You can't be on 50%. But unless you've owned a practice, you don't understand what the real costs are. I mean, if somebody could employ me for 50%, I would do that tomorrow. And I could walk out the door at 5 o'clock at night. I'd be the happiest man in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you would too, Beck. If you were getting 50% commission, you would go, fantastic. I don't have to worry about staff. I don't have to worry about ordering. I don't have to worry about anything else.
Yeah.
I would do
They do say if you can find a really happy workplace to work in and you're getting remunerated well, there's no reason at all to have your own practice. That's what a lot of people say.
To be honest, I don't believe if you're earning 40% commission and you've got patients, I don't understand why you want your own practice. Really, I would be an employee or an associate any day of the week. Obviously, the problem is you've got to like where you're at. But even when you own your own practice, the issues that you have with staff and and HR problems, etc., etc. And then any time a patient complains, you're the bunny that has to deal with it. So there has to be a lot more remuneration for the owner of the practice based on the stress factor, and there's not enough, I don't believe.
Yes, it's a very interesting topic.
That's one of my pet topics. Because I just think, owners. Most of the time, when you're a dentist and an orthodontist, all you do is getting paid a good wage. Okay, because you're going to work somewhere else and be paid the same. And you should, and for the investment of your time and money, you should be, also having a return on that investment as well. And I just don't think we see it.
Yeah.
Some practices do, but a lot of them don't.
Yeah. Can you tell me about treatment coordinators?
Yep. Treatment coordinators have been around a lot in orthodontics. I think don't think they're around as much in general dentistry. So Robin is my treatment coordinator. We have other treatment coordinators in the practice as well. You know what? I think they're the most essential person. If you want to convert patients, they are the most essential person, because we as dentists, we are so clinical. We talk about a class 2 and a deep overbite. Patients have got no idea what we're talking about. And in fact, it was really interesting. When I first started in practice and I didn't have a treatment coordinator, I would spend an hour with a new patient. And because I thought the more time you spend, the better your conversion rate. And as I found out, it's the less time I spend was the better the conversion rate. Because I would confuse people. Seriously, it was just terrible. So now all I do is, you're just friendly, you say all that type of stuff. You tell them what the problems is, what you need. Then the treatment coordinator is the one that talks about all the risks, the pros and cons. Ask all the questions as a human being, because we as dentists don't tend to. You female dentists are far better than us males. You know, us males are really poor communicators with people, whereas you females are much better at communicating with people. So you definitely want a female treatment coordinator where they can, because as we all know, most of the decisions are made by the female in the family. They make those decisions, and which is fair enough. But then they can be really flexible in finding the right payment plan for them. And in the ideal world, the treatment coordinator should be the person that the patient sees right from the first phone call all the way through to the time they start treatment.
Oh,
and I would highly recommend, even in general practice, a treatment coordinator, because, and I know friends of mine like Andrew Dillon and in Pros, they use treatment coordinators all the time because we don't have the time and we don't really get down to what their concerns are, or probably more importantly, what their barriers to treatment are. Because because everybody's got different barriers, and they can get down and really ask those questions. So I think a treatment coordinator is absolutely essential in a practice. In fact, we've gone so far into the digital world, where you press 1, press 2 for this, and you get these recorded messages. So we've got to now go into the personable approach, and I think that the best practices are those that are going to be personable and answer the questions, and that's where the treatment coordinator comes in. The receptionists are too busy. You're too busy in the back, so this is the person that can give you all the time in the world.
So at your practice, Geoff, my understanding, you have a couple of treatment coordinators.
Yep.
Does the same patient stay with the same treatment coordinator for all throughout, or they can interchange between treatment coordinators too?
They can, but the patient is only really with the treatment coordinator until the day the braces are on. So at that point, the treatment coordinator basically backs off, but they're always there in case the patient wants to speak to somebody. But it's pretty rare, if they've got an issue or something like that. But so they're really just being with the treatment coordinator from the time they make their first phone call, the new patient exam, and then any questions, financial stuff, etc., until the braces are put on, or the aligners.
Yeah. And so if, say, someone calls up and said, I've lost the bracket, on my 3-5 or whatever, that's not to do with the treatment coordinator anymore.
No, that's purely receptionists, clinical staff.
Yeah.
So the treatment coordinator, for want of a better phrase, is a salesperson. Okay. As in, they're selling your service or espousing the virtues of your practice.
Yeah.
So you really have to. They really have to know really good communication skills.
And are they there at the D band as well? Is that something that you always make a point of?
Yes and no, because in the ideal world, I'd say yes. The way our practice runs, though, we do our new patient exams at the same time that my hygienists are doing the D bands, because I'm not required for any of that. So the way our schedule works, so it's unlikely that my treatment coordinator will be there at the same time. They might walk in and say hello, but that's about it.
That's a clever way of scheduling. I like it.
Oh, yeah. It's the old doctor time, the doctor time scheduling. Yeah. So we have records and we have D bands. So there's certain things. If I'm not required, then I can be doing other things. If it's in the banding time or adjustments, I'm there all the time. So we have we do it in blocks. So I have a 2-hour block where I see my new patients, and we can see 6 of those in 2 hours. I could run from one room to the other. Okay, not that I do that anymore, but I used to do it. I've now quieted down a bit. But Martin will see 6 patients. He's younger than I am. I'm getting too old for that stuff. And then we have a 2-hour block for doing our bandings. So what that means with our schedule is one day I might do my new patients at 9 and my bandings at 11. Another day I might do my new patients at 11, my bandings at 9. And I can flip the schedule around. So every day can be different. I might do some from 2 to 4 as well. Yeah, so I just flip my 2-hour blocks around, and that way I can be as convenient as possible for patients. They all want to come in at 6 o'clock. Well, I'm not going to do that, okay? But I'm going to be as convenient as possible between the hours of 9 and 4.
Yeah. So for anyone that's listening or watching in the audience, really, like if you want to run an orthodontic department within your own general practice, you might do like an ortho day, and that whole day you'd have pre-blocks, similar to what Geoff did.
And to go one step further, I think that's a really great point, Beck, that because here I've said, a hygienist is really a great way to do it. And a lot of people go, but I don't want to pay a hygienist for 5 days a week. So your point would be perfect. Yeah, have an ortho day on a Tuesday, and you just bring in a hygienist for 1 day. And if you can't fill the whole day up to start off with, I'm sure you could throw in a couple of scale and cleans to make it worthwhile. So so that's a perfect. So you don't have to do it all or none. You can just do it in stages.
Sorry?
So you just do it in stages.
Yeah, you just do it in stages. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then you can just slowly build that up.
Exactly right. Yeah, because it's important that you build it up to a level of your clinical competence as well. Because the last thing you want is to have 300 patients in your book and you're still struggling to just be able to finish them off, because then you're going to go home with sleepless nights. So it's really important that you build your practice slowly so you get that real clinical competence at the same time. And that does take a bit of time, but it's experience and mentorship, as you know.
Yeah. And so, Geoff, with the past treatment coordinators that you've ever hired, have you, you're saying essentially it's sales. So when you've hired these people in the past, have they ever come from sales backgrounds, or have they all come from dental? What's worked for you? What's not worked?
It's really interesting because for me, they've all come from dental, and mainly from orthodontics as well. So they've come understanding orthodontics. But if you speak to the practice management gurus, they will talk to you and say they should really come from sales, sales and customer service.
Yeah.
Okay. And in fact, it was interesting. I live in South Melbourne, and my partner and I, we went to the South Melbourne market. There was this girl who had at the Spanish restaurant at the South Melbourne market. So one day I sat there and I said, do you have any Vegemite? Because I love my eggs with Vegemite on my toast. And she said, no, we don't do that, sorry. I went back the next time and she had bought me a Vegemite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then I asked whether she had a paper. I went once by myself and I wanted to read the paper, so she went and bought me a paper. And I offered her a job.
Oh, wow.
And I offered her a job as a treatment coordinator because I thought her customer service was so good. And one of my instructors at Penn, a guy called Jerry Skleroff, he would only employ people who were great customer service at restaurants. That's who he employed all the time. So I think you can train them. And personally, the older I'm getting, I'd rather have the right personality. But you do want them to have the clinical knowledge as well.
Yes.
Because you want them to be able to understand about orthodontics a little bit. It's not hard to teach them, I might add, but it's a bit easier if they've done something. So to answer your question short, in my practice, they've all come with an orthodontic background of some description, but the majority of people, but the real gurus in the field would say, no, just sales. That's all you need.
Okay. No, that's good to know. Good to hear from your experience.
I've been out of interest. Do you have a treatment coordinator in your practice?
No, not yet. I was at one point about to hire one, but we're holding off.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see that. And one of the things you've got to, you've got to really do your KPIs and your metrics. It's really important to do it now and then see what the difference is in your conversion rate with a treatment coordinator.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm a big believer. I don't think many people need actually more new patients. I just think they need to convert their patients better.
Yeah. That's probably not a bad point. I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
We've only got so many hours in the day, and we're
Yes.
probably busy. But if you've got 2 new patients in a day, you could be busy for the rest of your life if you convert them properly.
Yeah.
Especially in a general practice, because they're lifetime patients.
Yeah.
You just got to do the right. You've just got to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think that in general practice, they say if you have, or any clinician, if you have 30 patients a month, so 1 a day, basically, maybe a little bit more than 1 a day, that's plenty to get you going. You could probably go on even less than that, really, if they're all quality patients, especially.
If you're quality patients and you convert them, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In orthodontics, we'd probably need 2 to 3. And we work on a 75% conversion rate, which is fairly high.
But 2 to 3 is running a orthodontic practice full time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you guys wouldn't do that. So if we had 3 new patients a day, we would band up 2 patients a day, and 2 patients a day, 8 patients a week. Yeah, we would be looking at about 350, 360 starts, which is probably about a $2.3 million practice.
Yeah.
And we would do that very comfortably.
Yeah. Okay. So on the topic of KPIs, what would be your top 3 KPIs that you would be tracking if you're providing, that people should be tracking if they're providing orthodontic services?
I'm going to give you 4.
All right, give me 4.
Because I promised less and deliver more, if you remember.
Yes, absolutely. Your mantra.
That's one of my mantras. Okay. Firstly is the number of new patients you're seeing. Second is the conversion rate.
Yeah.
The third and fourth. The third is it's the amount that you make per patient. So, in other words, the best way to discuss this. Let's say you charge a patient $6,000, and I can do that in 10 visits, whether it be a line of therapy, whether it be fixed braces. So I'm making $600 per visit. That's the bottom line. Now, if you're charging $4,000, okay, and you're taking 20 visits, you're making $200 per visit. Okay, so that is the most important KPI: is how much do you make per visit, which means we have to be really efficient in our treatment, because every time that patient sits in the chair costs you money. Because problem with orthodontics is we have a fixed fee, whereas in general dentistry you're going to be charging per unit you do. But in orthodontics we're going to make more money if we do it in less time. And you know what? Most patients prefer that anyway. Because nobody, okay, and they should, obviously they should pay for it if it's quicker. So that's what and then you can make it really simple. If you can say it's going to be $600 per visit or $900 per visit, you multiply the number of patients you're going to see in the day, and you get your gross income. It's very simple KPI. But what you would be, so every time you deband a patient or you finish a line of therapy, you would go and say, how many visits did it take me to do that, and what do they pay? Okay, and then the fourth one, which fits into that category a little bit, is how many emergencies are you seeing per day? Because your emergency patients, whether it be a broken bracket, a lost retainer, whatever it be, they're things that are not productive and stuff up your day. And one of my mentors called Ron Ronconi said 25% of your day is stuff that you shouldn't have, that was wrong and you should never have done in the first place. So if you get rid of that 25%, you've saved yourself a day a week. So I think those emergencies are really important to reduce, and that should be in every area of dentistry.
Yeah.
So they would be the 4 KPIs that I'd be looking at.
I love that. So I'm going to ask a very quick question. From a conversion point of view, what do you think what does good look like? Is there a range?
Well, I can only answer that in orthodontics, and it also depends on how you assess the conversion rate, because a lot of people fluff it up. Okay, so let me talk about how to do it for a second, because what a lot of people do is you take the total number of new patients you see, and what a lot of people do is they say, but 25% were recalls; they were too young to start, so they take those out of the equation. Okay, but you don't. Okay, every new patient you see, okay, and then whatever starts. So that's all it is. It's the starts over the new patients, because you're going to have patients who were in recall previously and they come in to become a start. Okay, so it's really important. Yeah, if you're doing it that way, a good conversion rate is about 75%. Anything over 75% is very good. Now, the problem that we've got today is if you've got an advertising-based model, then your conversion rate's going to be less, because you're going to have more tire kickers, okay? So it depends on how you're driving patients in as well.
That's a good point.
So in a good orthodontic practice, and this should be the same in general dentistry, because general dentistry even more so, because your patients are usually referred by other patients, unless you're doing a lot of advertising. And there's a lot of trust with you. There's more trust with you as a general dentist than there is with us as orthodontists, because they might have been with you for years and years. One of the biggest mistakes I think general dentists make is patients don't know that you do orthodontics, because you might have patients who are in your system for years and years, and they don't even know that you're doing anything. So you've got to tell them in some capacity. And I don't know, have you seen Channel D?
I have seen Channel D. I don't have it.
I think it's fantastic. Oh, you saw it in our practice. Yeah. Did you see that? Yeah. I think Channel D is fantastic. It was developed by Michael Cernick, who started Prime Practice. He was the communication specialist there. Things like that, I think, are really important, that you can educate the patients about what you're doing as well. We've actually just started doing newsletters for patients and for dentists. And I really believe that's something that would be really great for general dentists to do for their own patients. To do newsletters about sleep apnea, whatever it be. But you're educating them in dentistry. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. I think a lot of the times, like you said, there's a whole pool of patients there. It's just untapped. We're not even using it.
Well, that's where the Smile Club Direct and those people come into the equation. Okay, there's all these patients who want treatment. They don't even know that you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then we should be working off the back of all these other people marketing, our services, or services that we could do ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what do you think then, Geoff, is up and coming in orthodontics in the next 3 to 5 years? for both orthodontists and also for general dentists?
I don't think there's a lot there for orthodontists. Okay. And I think you in the general dental field are far better placed. I think the days of a specialist orthodontist will be gone. I think there'll always be a need for some, but not to the extent that we're doing now. Okay, I think aligners are going to take a much bigger place in the market, even when it comes to children. In fact, Martin is doing a lot more aligner therapy. I'm talking to 8 or 9 year olds.
Right.
Okay, and I'm bringing out a lecturer called Donna Galante next year. And Donna actually was one of my instructors at Penn, and she was the number one Invisalign lecturer for years and years. And she's doing these incredible cases of early treatment with aligners, 8 or 9 year olds. And when I spoke to her the other day, when Rob and I spoke to her, she said, I'm always very hesitant with young kids. And she actually said, it was probably very valid, the 8 or 9-year-old, they're actually the most cooperative because they do what the parents say. It's the 15-year-old, 16-year-old girls and boys, they're the hopeless ones. So there could be, I think the aligner market is going to be enormous, okay? It is enormous now, but even more so. But you've got to know what you're doing with aligners. You can't just press that button and approve it because, yeah. In fact, it's interesting now, there are more cases in front of APRA because of aligners than any other area of dentistry, which I don't understand why, but it's because I think we haven't managed everybody's expectations. But you've got to know what you're doing with aligners. It's a total fallacy that you just put it in and it works, as you know.
Yes, I remember when I was sitting in your training about aligner therapy. Brilliant training, by the way. It's amazing. And you were saying that most people probably do. They just go and click the approve button as soon as it comes back. And I'm definitely very, very guilty of that. Well, I was very guilty of that.
Well, it was funny. Last week, Martin and I, we lectured. There were 75 people in Melbourne to our aligner course, and out of the 75, there were 53 who did exactly that, and the other 22 were. And I said, we put up the hands of the other 22, and it turns out it was only because they'd done my course before. Because they also, so it would have been all 75. I mean, because they didn't know what they were doing, And so, what's the point of changing things if you don't know what you're changing? So, but that was a problem. That was a problem. But that's great. I mean, that's what education is all about. And even the aligner companies actually understand that too, because they realise that they lose clients because if it doesn't work, clients are unhappy. And you have this group of dentists who don't do any because they've been burned, or who do a lot because they've gone through that learning curve and learnt all these things to make it work. And that's the difference. But it can work really well if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, listen, Geoff, it's been so good having you on for a chat. And, I think there's a lot of things there which I'm sure, it's worthwhile even going back to rewatch and just make sure that, we've got all the words of wisdom down pat. And what I want to find out is if you have any final words before we say goodbye.
Yeah, look at my thought, to dentists out there, you guys are so good. To do what you do and be good in every field of dentistry, I take my hat off to you because we struggle just being good in orthodontics. And for you guys to do endo, perio, and have stressful patients. So all I'm going to suggest to you, because what's been interesting is a bit of background. I had a very busy practice and had a falling out with a corporate group. And so I now work 1 day a week in clinical practice in orthodontics, which I love. In a new practice, and the other 4 or 5 days I do teaching and involved in that. So my best advice to you is do what you love. Do what you love. And if you don't love dentistry, find another alternative. If you do love dentistry, that's fantastic. But do not just keep. I've just turned 60 now, and I've got lots of friends who've just been miserable for so long, and other people who've just loved it. And it's really nice to see the ones who've loved it. And I've got a couple, one of my good friends, as you know, Becky, is Michael Kemp, from the Barefoot Investor. And I actually had breakfast with him and Jesse Green on Sunday. Yeah. And we were talking about that. Yeah. And he ended up doing an MBA and changed his whole life. Yeah. And don't never feel like you're too old. Just always strive to be happy, because if you're happy, then your reward will come with it. And so, and the other advice I'm going to give people, we talk about that on the weekend as well. Everybody wants to be a property developer or run a restaurant or do all this type of stuff to make money. My advice is do not get involved in areas that you don't know anything about. Okay, and trust me, I can tell you about all the losses I've done, okay? And they've all been in areas where I went into an area that I was not an expert on, whether it be finance, whatever it be. So protect yourself. if you don't know the share market, and most people don't go and invest, in different stocks. Just invest in AFIC or something like that, or property. You've got to really know what you're doing. And everybody thinks you're an entrepreneur, and there are very few true entrepreneurs in dentistry, unfortunately. Okay, dentistry is going to make you a very good living if you know what you're doing. Okay, and that's my advice to younger people. Oh, and my third bit of advice, which I never did, and I wish I did this. Okay. And this was Michael Kemp. Pay yourself first, because we all invest money. We all spend money and do that. Pay yourself first and put money into your super fund when you're young. I think I was talking to you about that once, Becky. Because if you do that, you'll have enough to retire. But we all wait till we're 35, 40, and we lose that compound interest part. So, as soon as you graduate, put the maximum amount into your super fund each and every year. And you know what? By the time you're 55, you'll have enough to retire. Okay? So it really, really, really is important. Okay? I think that's enough of me ranting and raving.
No, I love it. It's covered all life principles, not just orthodontics.
Well, I suppose when you get to my age, that's what you look at as well. Yeah.
The big picture.
And wish you did things a little bit differently. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your generous time, Geoff.
Oh, Becky, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. And I've got to say, Becky, I'm so impressed with you. The way you've built up the practice, this whole forum group that you've got. I take my hat off to you. You're an amazing human being. And we need people like you in the dental profession to take it to the next level. So thank you for what you do for everyone.
Oh, no, you're much too kind. Thank you, Geoff. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you, everyone. See you later. Have a good night.
Have a good night.